Thank you. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the order. Call the order, please.
Mr. Benton?
Here.
Mrs. Boer? Here. Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas? Here. Mr. Swager?
Here. Do we have audience comments? Thank you. Mr. Ryan, can you come over to the just so that people at home can hear you?
Does he have a speaker?
Yeah. There.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Keith Ryan. I'm here as your appointee for the Greater Johnstown Park and Recreation District. Kind of wanted to give you an update of what we're doing and how things are progressing. Obviously here within the last month, we've been extremely busy trying to get ahead of some things that are happening. We've had our eye on some properties and different things like that, but obviously things are moving a little quicker than maybe we would like. But first and foremost, our group right now, we're working on getting our bylaws put together. We are working on our 501c3 and all those kind of things. Susan Serino, she got us pro bono with Ice Miller, and they're assisting us in that department. So, and then the Miles Estate, I think most of you have probably heard about what's going on up there. We're certainly trying to get ahead of it. Nothing's been signed, sealed, or delivered. So it has not, at least to my knowledge, has not gone through the process of the probate court or the Attorney General. The Attorney General has reached out to the city of Johnstown, and they're aware of our group. I've had conversations with Roger Smith, the trustee of the Miles Estate, many conversations with Sean Standard, Jack Liggett, and all the council people, trying to come up with a plan and a process of what we need to do to be a stakeholder on this particular property. So I did meet with the gentleman last night from the governor's office, and he's a friend of mine and also a person I've done a lot of work for. And he's offered his services and contacts to us to formulate some letters and try to get us a little bit. One of the things that he had suggested, and one of the reasons why I'm here, is a letter of support. We have two contacts from the Attorney General's office that have been reaching out to us, and then also Deborah Yang from the probate court. These people are the ones that are ultimately going to make this decision of what happens with the Perry Miles Estate. So we're trying to get support for this property that the Greater Johnstown Parks and Recreation group get ownership of this property. I think that probably speaks to Perry Miles's will more than anything. I don't know, have you all seen the will or have copies of the will? Okay, because I have copies here if you need them, and where the property is located, those type of things. Okay, so one of the things I'm asking for, is a letter of support from school district, from the board, just stating that you support our efforts to utilize this property and have basically possession of the property and try to use it for recreational purposes.
Keith, do you have a proposed letter of support that you'd like?
I do
us
not.
To use?
We are
Okay.
working on that, and that might be our better avenue is to go ahead and do a form letter and then pass that out.
I'd like to, Ruth Ann's our liaison with the village on these types of issues, and
Yeah.
obviously we're in, the city of Johnstown. I
Yeah.
continually say village, but
Yeah.
the city of Johnstown and us obviously are the ones that form that joint park district. So we should both be writing a very similar, if not identical, letter of support if we're going to do that.
Yeah, I had a meeting today with Jack Liggett and Sean, and they are doing a resolution, or asking council for a resolution in support, and then we'll forward those off. And yeah, we could certainly create a form letter that we could circulate for support, and then hopefully we're not too late and get it in front of the people that need to look at it. But we do have a lot of people working hard at it, both at the city level and concerned citizens, and also, like I said, I have a person in state government. Ice Miller has also offered their support to our group as well.
And the letter of support is exactly what, asking them to turn over property to the Joint Parks District?
Yeah, correct. That's what we're asking the city for, their support on that. We're at this point we're asking for it in its entirety. So we're looking for the land, and we're looking for all proceeds. We feel like that best represents Perry Miles's wishes, and I've talked to some family members, and I tend to agree. We'd like to keep it in the area. Like I said, I've had a really long discussion with Roger Smith. It was very good. And others are having conversations as well. So we're hopeful that we could certainly get a part of this at least. So
I'd like to clarify a piece of gossip. So
Yeah.
you're probably the right one to do that. Have the artifacts from the facility, the buildings, I don't know what buildings are left, but have those been sold at auction?
yes, they have. I actually have
That's what I
photos of them. Now there are still some items that were sold in a silent auction back in April. Chip Carpenter was the auctioneer. I was talking to, is it Terry Fetters?
Fetters.
And she's a relation. She knew about the auction. Obviously didn't support it. Supposedly, some of the more valuable items are still in Richard Heath's office on display. So, but yeah, there's many items. If you want to go, you can still look at the past auctions and go on to Chip Carpenter's website, and you will find these items. And there's quite a few of them, books and lots of items.
Does it say who purchased them?
Not in the
I
website.
didn't think
Now,
so.
Terry seemed, with my conversation with her, she knew what some of the items brought, but I don't know if she knows who actually purchased them, what the proceeds were.
I'm aware that there is a retail shop or wholesale shop, antique shop, I'm not sure the name of it,
Right.
in Lancaster that does have some artifacts. So
I've heard the same thing. I'm trying to get somebody to give me some information as far as where they are. Now, with my conversation with the gentleman from the governor's office, he basically stated that, they had the right
Sure.
to sell, or
They
they could
bought
sell it. Whether they should have sold it, that's up for public discussion. But it's done. You know what I mean? The
Okay.
fight's over in that department.
just wanted to clarify. So
Yeah, yes, I do have, I did research it and found photos and stuff. And also, my term will expire August 15th. I will send a formal letter, but I would like to continue at least we have decided as a group, even though our bylaws are not set in place, that we're going to have 3-year terms, 2 years per term. And then after that, you have to set off at least 1 year, and then you can reapply. So this would be my second term. First term was 1-year term. So this would be my second term as a 2-year term, and then going forward from there. But it is my intent to this group. I do like the group. I like the group. We've got a lot of different ideas, but
good. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Point of clarification, do we need to would we recommend a discussion here at the board, and then if we support doing a letter of support, Keith, I'd ask you, we don't meet again until July 7th or
First part of
9th,
July.
right?
Yeah.
Which is later on the agenda. But is that soon enough for you?
I think so.
Okay. No, you're good.
No,
Okay. I think we'll have enough other letters that,
I mean, we can probably do a motion to give the letter of support and then draft it in between the meetings, provided, it meets the guidelines, if that's an easier way to go about it. That way, we don't want to delay them and not have that letter of support going forward prior to a hearing.
You might want to add under new business a motion to provide that letter of support pending review of the board prior to sending. Keith, if I could ask that you send me a draft copy of what you'd like and the parties to which it needs to be sent, I'd be happy to work with the board, make sure they all get copies. We could probably expedite that process within a week or two if that's acceptable.
That'd be my preference. Anyone else?
Shoot it
on
over
that?
to me. Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. Oh, hey, Keith, before you leave, could you give your map and information to Dr. Wagner, front row here? He's the will and and the location, just so he has a copy of that.
Give him 2 copies of the will. I need one too.
Everybody gets a copy.
Yeah, everybody. It's like Oprah.
The more the better,
get
because we're mentioned in the first paragraph.
Thank you. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Next one, I'm just going to say Bradley because I can't read the last name on there.
I'm up here to talk about the wrestling program. I'm not sure what's actually going on with the wrestling program. But last year I moved into Johnstown. I was very excited that they actually had a youth wrestling. Me, myself, I wanted to use wrestling when I was a little kid. And my daughter, actually, my 6-year-old, went into wrestling, was very excited with it, and was very happy with everything that turned out from it. So I'm not sure if there was a problem with it or if someone was trying to retire, but I would like to see this program continue.
We have a little bit of discussion on this yet to come. We've got a report from Robbie on just sports in general, and wrestling is one of those. It really, for us, it comes down to participation numbers. We've been lacking in numbers at the high school level, and we're not filling a lot of weights. It's not at the lower levels. We're dealing with the high school level varsity sport of that.
So would that affect the youth wrestling then?
It would not. That's the youth wrestling is run through. Well,
Okay.
it's not on, I don't think it's an
It's not on
agenda
the
item.
agenda.
It's not an agenda item. It's a discussion that the board has to have. Robbie prepared some report to give on that for us, but we have not had discussion. Yeah, there's no decision being made today, if that's what you're asking. Yeah. Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Bob, are you back there? No. You were hiding. I didn't see you.
Bob Orsini. I live here in Johnstown, across the street, 291 Central Station Drive. Came in to talk to y'all. 2 reasons today. One would be the wrestling program, and to give you an update, I'm the commissioner of the JYA Youth Wrestling Program and the head coach. We thought it might be meaningful to know what's going on within that program, because wrestling as a whole operates as a community. Whether they're 5, 15, or 18 doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. It's about the sport, and we are in constant communication as a group, and in most things we're in agreement and have some synergy there. I can speak on that later. Other topic is I want to offer my time and talent, whatever's necessary, to take the crossing guard situation on 37 through the entire process. Now, whether that's feasible, not feasible, what has been done, hasn't been done, I don't have details on it. I know there are challenges involved, but I want to offer being a conduit from this board, the city, and the state, if necessary, to either get to a situation where there is a crossing guard or have clear lines and information on what stopped it, who stopped it, and who's going to be responsible if something happens. I can't speak to Leafydale. I can speak to Concord Crossing. My 7th grader's been crossing there for 2 years, going to be in 8th grade. Typical occurrences. No one stops. One line of traffic stops. He crosses, has to wait. People yell out the window, blow the horn at him while he's in the street. All right, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, you can manage it. My 4th grader, when he was a 4th grader, going to be a 5th grader, is the kid that will, when one car stops, take off running across the street. That's a big challenge. And I think it's fair to say that we're going to have more traffic and people that aren't familiar with our traffic flow and pattern or care as they try to get around traffic in other areas to get to work or other places in town. Big danger. And lastly, that exit out of the middle school, the exit only lane where you go left or right, new drivers and experienced drivers, when you're turning right, you tend to look at left coming traffic. You stop, you wait, you don't see a car, you pull out. Very rarely do you turn right and then look down to make sure a little kid isn't jetting out into traffic. It's a big potential for contact right there. So whatever I can do, whatever information you can share as far as furthering that, I'm happy to do it. It's important to me personally, because my children will cross there. And then as a community situation, I'd imagine it's probably somewhat similar as far as the danger, but maybe not the details over at Concord. Leafydale.
Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
I believe that's all part of the Safe Routes to School through the city of Johnstown and ODOT.
We need an update.
And we'll need an update from them. We haven't heard anything back. We don't, I mean, as you know, we don't control that roadway. We can ask for things, we can push for
Sure.
things, but the roadway is ODOT's and now is coming under the city's purview
Gonna roll
now.
under the city's purview.
Yeah.
Original statement, whatever information that you have that I can share with the city council, with the state, whatever we need to do to get across the finish line or get to a point where we can say, this route, these people said no. Because what I don't want is if something happens, everyone to shrug. I'm gonna put the effort in, the time needed to make sure that everyone understands that what's at risk for the group, for the community, and certainly for the children.
And I guess I want to be clarified by somebody here. What specifically was asked for that got turned down? I'm not aware of anything specifically being said no to.
Most of the crosswalk work that we did was associated with Leafydale. When it comes to the crosswalk to which Bob is referring, that is a state highway, and we get limited on what can be done. So in all the Safe Routes to Schools discussions with the city, you can't put crossing guards out there. It would be an officer or a fire official who would be certified to stand in the middle of a state highway and conduct traffic. So there is no crossing program per se that can be put into effect on a state highway like that. So we would need alternatives, i.e. paid personnel to put on those crosswalks.
Okay. Was that, go ahead. Go ahead.
I've seen mechanical solutions that may be better. Our lights blink, but they blink constant, which kind of disappears. If you ask yourself what picture on the wall in the hallway is second from the left, most people aren't going to be able to tell you what it is because you're used to seeing it. I've seen, it's like a train crossing with no gates.
Yeah, they're called rapid flashing beacons. Not, you're getting into my real job here.
Yes. So
So,
they're all, as you know, they're all alternatives that
Yeah.
have stop signs or different things. They all come with a cost. And I'm not asking for funding. I'm asking for direction, for intention, or what you all would think would be the best solution or a best solution that I can put before city council and make sure we have clear decisions and clear accountability other than, well, they didn't, this person said, and I'm getting a lot of that when I ask questions.
Tim, the last big push on this resulted in the flashing lights we have.
right.
Just to inform you, I believe that was about 2016, 17.
They told us to spend it on. Don't say that, but that's what we were told.
I'm not aware of us funding anything over there for
No.
Safe Routes to
No, that was a
School, but
city funded
that issue over there, not,
crosswalk.
but Safe Routes to School is an ODOT safety initiative where they fund it each year, and there's a grant period to apply for that. We have to find out if we're applying. If we can't apply, the city of Johnstown has to apply on in conjunction with us, but we can't apply for it. It has to be the jurisdiction. So we just have to find out, one, are they applying for that? Two, what the deadlines are. That's the start to that process. So those would be good questions, I guess, at this point for either Jack or Sean. I don't know who's handling that aspect of it, or Bailey. I don't know.
The other question is the $120,000 we gave for a crosswalk or a something safety issue there at Leafydale. When they didn't spend it, I know I sat in one meeting. They said they were going to use part of that money for a blinking light, which they put at Edwards and Main Street.
I thought we put sidewalks
Did we
in
put-
and then got refunded the
No,
balance, right?
we provided as part of an agreement, I believe it was roughly 120,000 to the city of, or then village of Johnstown,
Yes.
to be used toward that intersection at Leafydale and 37. The city chose to use a portion of that, I believe 65,000 and change, to build sidewalks on Leafydale Drive. As you go in from 37, it'd be the sidewalks you now see from the right, where there were none. Their idea was to provide safe pedestrian traffic from the library back to the school. And so you have two intersections, obviously, 37 and Leafydale, and Parkdale and Leafydale, that have continued to be issues because we can't provide people to go out into the street to direct traffic. Then they had a limit of time which they could spend that money. They did not spend the balance of the 120. The balance was returned to the school district. So that is a closed account, Ruth Ann.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just happened this year.
Okay.
Now, the only other question I would have is the busing situation where there's the radius, which makes sense. Who generates that rule? Because that goes to accountability. If you make that rule, therefore, then you can assume the children will be walking.
That's, the busing is based on the state of
State of
Ohio's
Ohio.
guideline,
Absolutely.
State of Ohio.
the ODE.
Very good. Thank you much.
Thank you, Bob.
Hey, Bob, have you contacted the city council yet? You know how it all works.
I want to start by gathering information so that when I did approach them, I would have some more facts and some more information.
Because you know how everything works. You used to be on the city council.
I am
or village
I'm
council,
well
right?
versed in how things work in the process, and
Okay.
my goal now is to not be accusational, not be bravado about it. Just gather information, present it, let the decisions be what they are. But sometimes when people know they have accountability for the decisions, they may consider them a little more in depth.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Bob.
Anybody else that didn't sign up?
Yeah, the lady here in the front.
If you don't mind, state your name.
My name is Tanya Romer. I just moved here last year. I was hoping that my son would start kindergarten this year, but that didn't work out. But such is the times we live in, that even you have to follow the school board. And I wanted to offer my assistance based on what the gentleman spoke about the last school board meeting, inappropriate content that had slipped through into the high school. And you had mentioned having people to try to go through and find, if somebody had to search through, do like a word search and stuff, such like. I just wanted to offer my assistance, and I think it's important to be part of the solution. So I'm putting my name out there.
I appreciate that. If you don't mind, if you can, I wrote your name and whether or not I spelled it correctly, but if you could provide your other information on this, that way we can have it. Anybody else? All right, on to the treasurer's report.
All right, you have 3 sets of minutes for your review. You have the May 6th special session, the May 9th regular session, and the May 23rd work session. You should have the April treasurer's report. This is the final for fiscal year 22. Fiscal year ends June 30th, so this is our finalized estimated resources and appropriations. And then we are asking for temporary appropriations for the 22-23 fiscal year in the amounts provided. We have 3 donations for the James Worthen Memorial Scholarship Fund to accept. We are recommending the approval of the renewal of the property, auto, and liability insurance coverage through Ohio School Plan. We had a couple of quotes on it, and Ohio School Plan is still the best value in our opinion. We are asking to approve a list of technology items to be removed from inventory. And finally, we are asking for approval for our annual transfer into the Capital Projects Fund, which funds, it's our set aside for the track and field, the turf, parking lots, and our biggest one that we're setting aside for is the future construction of a school building.
Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Can we get a second?
Oh, sorry.
Discussion.
Ruth Ann?
I just have a question on the bid. How many did we bid out the property and casualty?
Yes, we had 2 responses.
With 2 respondents? Higher?
The other one was lower, but the coverage was not as robust.
Okay. Nice work.
And I saw Ann had written some stuff. We got that resolved. Okay.
Yep, yes, that is resolved.
Yes.
They're back. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas. Yes, Mr. Swager.
Yes, motion carries. I'd also like to thank our donors for the their donations to the Worth and Memorial Scholarship Fund. Thank you. Mr. Dixon.
Yes, good evening. I'd like to start this evening by introducing a few folks that you'll see a little later on the agenda for approval. And I'll start with Marcy. Would you introduce those that are here? These are candidates that later on you'll be voting to approve contracts.
Good evening. We have 4 new candidates tonight from JES. We've been pretty busy over there hiring, and really great candidates we're happy to welcome tonight. So do you want them to introduce themselves or me? Just me?
You can bring them up
Okay.
each. That'd be
All
fine.
right. So we'll start with Kirsten Burnett. She's going to be our elementary art teacher.
Hi, my name is Kirsten Burnett. I'm originally from Gallipolis, Ohio, but I now live in Columbus. I went to Ohio State. I've been teaching the last 2 years at Liberty Union Elementary and Middle School, teaching K through 7th grade. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to join this district.
Thank you. Welcome.
Great. And we have Minna Crothers, who we're welcoming home. Minna has been away from Johnstown as district for a while. She still lives in Johnstown, but she'll be joining us as 3rd grade intervention specialist.
As Marcy said, this is kind of full circle for me. I came to Johnstown district, several years ago, maybe around 2016. It was a parapro, and actually worked with an intervention specialist that year, and she inspired me to go back and get my intervention specialist license. So for the past few years, I've been doing intervention at North Fork, Newton Elementary, and so now it's good to be back home doing intervention this year at JES. Thank you.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And we have our new kindergarten teacher, Tatum Minton, coming up next.
Hi, I'm from Utica. I'm a recent graduate of Ohio State, and I'm entering my 3rd year as a high school basketball assistant coach at Utica. And we actually have games tonight at Johnstown, so if you see me leave, that's where I'm going. And I'm really excited to start my teaching career here. Thanks.
Thank you.
You'll be rooting for us tonight. Is that how that works?
Got it. And we have Cindy Snowden coming up next, who is going to be kindergarten intervention.
Hi, I'm Cindy, and I am excited to be here. I spent 34 years in Worthington as an intervention specialist, 17 years in a residential setting. Retired and then knew how much I just missed it. My husband and I just moved here in September to Johnstown, and we are just so excited to be a part of the community, and I felt it was time to go back and do what it is I do best. And I'm excited to be a part of this community and a part of the school system.
Very nice. Thank you.
In addition, I'd like to introduce Alicia Dole. Alicia is joining us at our high school as intervention specialist.
Hi, I'm Alicia Dole. I've spent the last 12 years teaching in the charter schools of Columbus and was looking for a change and interviewed at Johnstown, and it felt a lot like my home high school. I'm from Wapakoneta, Ohio, and so I'm really excited to join your guys' community and make a difference with some of our big kids.
Thank you.
Thanks for each one of you being here this evening. The board always likes to put a face with folks that they're voting on, and so thanks for taking the time to be here this evening. It's a nice little tradition they have here.
Yes.
And welcome. With regard to staffing, board, I think I've advised you already on different situations that we're facing with respect to recruiting parapro student attendance. In particular, we still have 3 openings there. We are now conducting another search for elementary dean of students, giving you that information in advance of the meeting. Sadly, we have to go back and look for someone else. So we're opening that up, already have candidates applying as of today. And we will continue to monitor any further changes in the near future up through July 10th. And after July 10th, as you know, in state law, school districts tend to hold employees accountable for their contracts after that date. So that's why later in the agenda, I've asked the president to consider entertaining a motion this evening under new business to possibly change the date of our July meeting, because currently it's scheduled for the 11th, and we would like to bring that back the week prior. So as we hire folks in, it gives them an opportunity, once we vote on their contract, to give their resignation to the district from which they're leaving. So that's kind of a general staffing report for you. We continue to search for the open positions listed. I'd like to report that it's just been a real pleasure working in transition with Dr. Wagner. He's been at several events and come up work several days, continuing to do so. I think tomorrow you're spending a preponderance of the day with us, and look forward to continue to have you at committee meetings and as many meetings as we can have you attend. We were fortunate to be able to go down, and there's a new Johnstown Chamber of Commerce forming, and they had a gathering at 4. So Dr. Wagner was able to meet several folks down there earlier before we came to the board meeting. So it's just been a pleasure, Dr. Wagner, working with you and board. I think you're going to enjoy working with him post-transition. I'd like to remind everyone that Friday, June 24th, starting at about 5:45, there will be a short concert by our Big Red Band down in Town Square. And they usually run a few numbers, and then they start their annual cake auction. So anybody and everybody is welcome to come and bid often and bid high.
Bring your wallet.
Help your band. Help your Big Red Band. I want to highlight a few changes in your agenda since it went out last Friday, and we then had a change of date from Monday to tonight. We did add on because we were able to finish some more work on some personnel. And so under item 9A, I want to bring to the board's attention, you will notice Kristen Burnett and Tatum Minton added to that list where previously they were not on there. Under item B, we have a motion to approve Sarah Dillon as a student attendant. We were able to secure her services since Friday. Under item C, we've added Lori Wyckoff, who has served very faithfully here in the middle school and has accepted the position as high school secretary. So we wanted to get her approved this evening as well. And if we go back to item 11, item 9M, there you will see the added resignation from my conversation with the candidate who originally accepted and signed for the job. And you also see another resignation that's come in since Friday, and that is from one of our high school Spanish teachers that I've added to the agenda so that we may go forth with our interviewing process for a replacement. And finally, under item 11, I have added a motion. I had texted Mr. Swagger and Mrs. Davis asking if we might consider changing tonight the board meeting for July for reasons I mentioned heretofore. Those are changes to your agenda for this evening. Earlier today, I did receive, and I went ahead and sent out to the board the discipline reports showing second semester and the annual aggregation. I will get those out to the administrative team. We still have to review those, but I know the board likes to see those. I do have your request, Mr. Swagger, for maybe a breakdown by teachers, and we'll work on that. I'll get with Jen tomorrow and see what we might come up with in that vein.
Thank you.
And we'll continue to report. I do want to especially thank Jen Villa, our EMIS coordinator. She's done a tremendous job this year in many, many areas. One of them has been trying to coordinate and unify our coding by building to building, make sure we're all on the same page. We made great strides in that. It's not perfect yet, and we want to hone through this report to identify any other areas still needing adjustments. And then, of course, when we roll over with our new Power School program, we hope to have all the coding settled before then. So thank them, and also, of course, Debbie Seibel, who continues to consult and help behind the scenes and getting all these corrections made with the technology in our district. A great help. And thank you to the principals, because the principals spend a lot of time reviewing their cases, reviewing their coding, reviewing their incidents and how they're determining what is what. So it's taken time this year, but it's been time well spent. So ultimately, I think we'll end up with good reports for the district. Also, in a separate communication I sent out to you, you see the work report from the policy committee. There's, I believe, 7 policies that I put forth to the board for you to review prior to the July meeting. If you take a look at those, any questions, feel free to call any committee member. We'll try to address those prior to July meeting. Those are the ones that the committee felt were the most important to get acted on quickly. And you would have found a second set of documents of those that the committee chose to reject currently for reasons I think I noted in red on the copies I sent out to the board. So any discussions welcome on those as we continue to try to bring our policies up to date. With that, I'm ready to proceed through the agenda items if that's.
Yeah, Mr. Dixon, I'd like to do item 8, and then prior to 9, I'll be requesting an executive session.
Okay, the items under general recommendations this evening are as listed under item 8. To approve signage project as recommended by the Buildings and Grounds Committee at a cost of $28,207. Board, you had a detailed report given to you from the committee articulating the signage. This is just a better help people identify what buildings are what. It's kind of hard. One, you got to know where to turn off 37 to get in. That's kind of hard to identify with people coming out of town. And then once you get on campus, what building's which? So this signage will take care of that, and I thank the committee for their work on that. Under item B, to approve a service agreement and therapy services with Learning Spectrum as presented at a cost of $50,280. This is the second such agreement. If you remember, we had one last month. So we have 2 students that will be attending based on their needs at the Learning Spectrum next year. And thanks to Guy Williams for his work in formulating those agreements and making sure these children are receiving the services that they richly deserve. Under item C, asking you to approve a 1-year agreement with iReady to provide diagnostic services at a cost not to exceed $63,265.50. This iReady diagnostic program has been exceptional at helping our administrators and teachers understand where students are compared to where they should be and getting them on track to reach those goals. Under item D, asking the board to approve a paging system from Bogans and Nyquist. The cost for that system going into our middle school is $55,940, and that is coming from our safety grant recently received from the state of Ohio School Facilities Commission grants. Under item E, to approve the purchase of additional cameras and related installation work for the high school and middle school at a cost of $85,209.98 to be paid also from the OFCC safety grants received. I want to say once again, these are great additions to our safety abilities within this district. And I want to echo again, this is one Debbie Seibel took on, wrote the grant, saw it through, received a grant in excess of $160,000 from the state. And we're going to keep working until we get that elementary grant, aren't we, Debbie? But
we only have 5 more years of your service.
We're going to hate to see
keep working it.
5
You're
years.
right.
It's going to be tough.
No, we're very blessed to have that, and Debbie's work is much appreciated. This will help tremendously. I might echo, you might have read in the paper where additional dollars are being earmarked to safety. Unfortunately, those who have received the grants aren't going to be eligible for the second round, which I guess I understand. I was kind of hoping we could throw our elementary, since we didn't get the elementary, back in, but there's other districts around us that didn't get any, and I'll stop there. Under item F, to approve annual service legal agreement with Licking Area Computer Association at a cost of $106,441.09, effective July 1st. Those are my general recommendations for this evening.
If I can get a motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? I thought the building signage looked fabulous. I don't know who worked on that, but that looked really nice.
Great.
So I look forward to that.
It was a
being
joint
completed.
effort. Dave, Jenny, Ann, Ruth Ann, Debbie Seibel, did a great job. I mean, it's input after input after input and adjustment and color changes, but you know what? The plan is good.
Yeah, it's going to look really nice.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Very impressive.
It'd be nice to have the signage up. Debbie, thank you for your work on writing that on the grants.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, Guy.
Any other comments, questions? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes, motion carries. This time, I'd like to get a motion for an executive session for personnel.
All motion.
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
5:45.
Thank you.
Who would you like in the meeting? Want the
Dale.
room opened up?
Yeah, if we could, you
108.
Yes. Just wait on us. Everybody got the mics back on?
We're on.
That's a good one.
We all got those.
All these medals are weighing me down.
Yeah, I got one too. Want me?
I'll bring you scratches me. Ready? We're back.
Yes, we're ready.
We're on.
Yep. We're on, Deb. Thank you.
Under personnel recommendations, section 9, I have the following recommendations. Under A, I'm asking the board to approve those listed as certified positions for employment contracts. Under item B, asking the board to approve Sarah Dillon as a student attendant for fiscal year 23. Under item C, asking to approve a transfer for instructional parapro Lori Wyckoff to the position of high school secretary. Under item D, I'm asking the board to approve supplemental positions as listed. Under item E, under the consent agenda, asking the board to approve pupil activity positions for employment for next year. And please note that one of those is retroactive, and board has explanation as to what happened there. Under item F, asking the board to approve the following volunteers as listed for the 22-23 school year. Under item G, to accept the resignation of Karen Piper as assistant musical director. Under item H, to approve the job description for middle school dean of students as presented. Under item I, to approve the following unpaid days for Cynthia Snowden. Under item J, to approve ELL services agreement with Sherry Summers for fiscal year 2023. Under item K, to authorize the following food service staffing changes, which include the creation of 2 new positions in the Johnstown Intermediate School and expanded hours for existing staff as listed at both the middle and the high schools. Under item L, to authorize an additional psychologist position to a maximum of 0.5 FTE or half time to be employed through the Licking County Educational Service Center. It should be a C instead of an A. Next year, to share said position with Northridge. Under item M, to accept the resignation of Joshua Martin as elementary dean of students. Under item N, to accept the resignation of Alicia Guess as high school Spanish teacher. And item, we'll stop there, and I would like to make note, number 1, I want to thank Alicia Guess for her great service to our kids in the area of Spanish. She's done a great job there. We hate to lose her. I'd also like to express my thanks to Karen Piper, who has gone out of her way to help our kids tremendously for many years. Her services are certainly appreciated. And back up here, I thought we had one more. Hope I didn't overlook it. Just double checking. Those are my recommendations for personnel under consent agenda this evening.
All right. I've got a couple items that we'd like to pull out separately, only because we have a couple members who can't vote on them. So if I could get a motion for everything except F.
You'd like to pull out item F for a separate vote?
And Alan's on that
Understand.
F, and Ruth Ann has a conflict on J.
So I'd
J and
recommend
K.
pulling items F and J for separate votes, please.
And K.
and K.
Yeah, F, J, and K we have to have separate votes on. So if I can get a motion for all of those except for F, J, and K.
I'll motion.
I'll second it.
If we can have a discussion. Obviously, thanks to all those and soon to be welcome aboard. Thanks for sticking around. Any other comments, questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Yes. Mr. Swagger?
Yes, motion carried. And congratulations. Thank you. If I can get a motion for item F,
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Abstain.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Abstain. Mr. Swagger?
Yes. And then items J and K can be put together. Can I get a motion for items J and K? You're abstaining from both. Right?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Call the roll on J and K, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer? Abstain. Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Yes. Mr. Swagger?
Yes, motion carries. Then back to you, Mr. Dixon. I think that's supposed to be an O and not an M again on the next one.
You are absolutely correct. I'll have to speak to our typist on that one. Just catching up on my notes here.
I'm getting pretty good at the alphabet.
Under item O, to approve the amendment to the employment contract. I believe that you wanted this to read separately.
Correct.
I will amend my recommendation to the board to ask for the board to approve for fiscal year 22-23 an additional 6 days contract for Marcy Wilson to cover the work summer of 23. I believe that's within the will of the board.
And that's at our current per diem, just to
At her current per diem. We will add that.
if I can get a motion on that.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Yes. Mr. Swagger?
Yes, motion carries. Anything else on that? We'll do the
You'll
additional
prepare that
business.
contract then and a per diem separate contract. Thank you. Per diem. Those were my personnel recommendations for this evening.
At this time, under new business, Kim, I forgot to email you this. I know I mentioned it to you. We've talked. We still have to do your evaluation, so you'll be exempted in this 2.75 till we complete your evaluation. I don't know how we need to make that motion on that one.
Okay.
I don't know how we word that.
Oh, because it says for all returning administrators.
Yeah. So it says to approve a 2.75. I don't want to say minus Kim, but minus you.
Minus.
Well, we as the board have to complete your evaluation before we can set a pay increase.
With the exception.
So yeah, I guess I'll modify that to say to approve a 2.75% increase for all returning administrators for the 22-23 school year, except for the facility manager, who will receive a 4% increase, and except for the treasurer, who will be reviewed prior to any increase. Evaluated. Does that make sense? You good? Can I get a motion on that?
I'll make the motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Discussion for anyone? This matches the increase that we gave the other personnel. So, call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Yes. Mr. Swagger?
Yes, motion carries.
Do we need to set a date so that we have it on the calendar, so that we have Kim evaluation done by? I mean, I think it's just
When is the end of your contract year?
July 31st.
So prior to July 31st, we need to have action.
You're the one who keeps the dates for us.
All right. I'd like to skip item B for the second and then to go to item C. This is to change the next board meeting from the July 11th, and this is at the request of Mr. Dixon because we have July 10th in Ms. Pulley. We have July 10th being one of the state deadlines for contracts. So they're asking us to move that meeting to, was it the 7th or the 9th, I believe?
5th or 7th.
5th or the
Fifth or
7th was recommended. That's a Tuesday or a Thursday the week prior.
Does anyone have any preference on that?
The earlier the better because
Tuesday the
it's
5th?
giving them more
Everybody
notice.
good?
Fifth, let's do it. Yep. Yep. We have to do the review, so.
Well, her contract, July 31st.
July 31st of this year.
Oh, yeah.
Are you having another?
Well, it can be retroactive if we do it at the first meeting of August.
Okay.
We've done that. We're retroactive to the contract if we don't get it done by then.
Yes, the 5th.
Is
July
everybody good
5th.
with July 5th? 5 p.m. on July 5th? Is everybody good? All right. If I can get a motion to approve the change in date from July 11th, 2022 to July 5th.
I'll motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. Mr. Brickner, if you can go ahead and present. And this is the wrestling portion. Didn't mean to put, I just want to get some of that paperwork done first.
Should I hook up my laptop so everyone can see the report or just go over basically what the report says?
Doesn't matter to me either way.
What would you like to do?
I'm gonna hook it up, and if it goes quickly, then we'll do that.
Okay.
If it doesn't, then we won't.
Sounds good to me.
If you would like to move to where you can see the display, I would suggest that you maybe move up forward.
Oh, thank you. All right, thanks for bearing with me there. Didn't take too long. So I've got a report, kind of a snapshot really, of the status of the Johnstown High School and Middle School Wrestling Program. So scrolling down here, let me know if everyone can see those or if I need to try to make those any bigger. Go there, here we go. Okay, so here we've got some program numbers for the up at the top winter sports season 21-22. That was the most recent completed sports season. And you see we've gone back to the 15-16 year and the number of broken down by grade level. Then if you go down there in the red says total high school and the total middle school. You can see how many kids have been participating in our school sponsored wrestling program since the 15-16 year. And then on the right, you can see I've got the average, minimum, and maximum number for total high school, total middle school, total 7 through 12. So I guess if there's any point where there's a question or something comes up, I'm not going to read word for word on everything. You can kind of look at it there. But if I need to slow down or if there are any questions, then please, don't be afraid to kind of stop me if I need to clarify anything. So the second table there, I've got a projection of numbers of participants for the high school and middle school programs over the next few years. This is guesswork. Sure. I am sure. So for participants, if you're looking at that first table, I am counting how many going back. Obviously, I've only been here 1 year, right? So outside of the 21-22 year, I'm going back to how many were listed in final form. So That basically means how many kids started the season, paid their fee, likely participated in at least the first few meets. I'm not sure at what point, maybe if there was a kid go out to injury, they're still counted on that. If there's a kid that maybe in the middle of the season decided to quit or stop participating due to ineligibility, because the wrestling season eligibility can start and or quarter 2 and quarter 3 right in the dead middle of wrestling season. So this is counting anybody that more than likely participated in a meet for that given year. Sure. Now I can't say that for sure, but you know, if there was a family in need, but yeah, more or less, yes. Yeah, there you go. Paid participants. There you go. Yeah, absolutely. So on that second table there, projected numbers. Again, this is my best attempt at guesswork given the current situation. Looking at how many we had participating at a given level this year. Also conversations with the youth wrestling organizers on what grade levels, how many they have participating, knowing that there's no perfect way of projecting this. You might have someone participate, just sports in general. You might have somebody participate their 5th and 6th grade level. There does seem to be a cutoff where maybe you can participate in 2 sports seasons that overlap at the rec league. Once you get to the middle school, you might lose some of that. And then as you go up the grades, you can see a pattern throughout years where if you have X number of participants in a sport, their 7th grade year, there's typically a little bit less 5 years later, their senior year. So I took the numbers that I knew from this year, both the high school, middle school, and youth programs, then projecting out for the kids that are currently in the rec league. I basically took away 1 or 2 if they were moving up from 6th grade to 7th grade level. And then I took away another 1 moving from the 8th grade to 9th grade level. So again, this is not a perfect formula. This is my best guess given the information that I have from this year and just in general, the patterns of year to year, you might get less come out for a particular sport. As kids kind of specialize, maybe, 7th grade, they might be in 3 sports. By the time their senior year, they might only be in 1 or 2. So there hopefully is a good snapshot of the wrestling program participants this year and possibly moving forward. One note here, of this most recently completed wrestling season, we had 14 between the high school and middle school level. I wanted to point out that none of those 14 participated in 3 different sports this school year. Exactly half, so 7 of those 14 participated in wrestling and then 1 additional sport, so either in the spring or the fall. But the point of me putting this in here is to point out that exactly half of those participants did not participate in another school-sponsored sport outside of wrestling. It is my anecdotal evidence that I do think there are sometimes kids that participate in wrestling and they might not be interested in some traditional ball and stick team type of sports. I do think there's a decent amount of kids that they wrestle, and by the time you get to high school or middle school, they don't maybe participate in other sports. So that's just what we have this year. Down here, this next part, I wanted to point out that Johnstown High School, in the most recently completed school year, we have 16 sponsored varsity sports. So notes there is that lacrosse, I did include in this since they participate in the OHSA tournament. They're a club, not school sponsored. And I did not include bowling. For instance, this year we did have 1 bowler that participated in the OHSA tournament as an individual, but did not compete as a team and did not compete throughout the season. That was just so. That's why lacrosse is in there and bowling or boys bowling is not in there. Of those 16, I count about 13 that host their home competitions basically in Johnstown school facilities. You'll note that I'm not going to read them out 1 through 13, but you can see them there. The ones that do not are cross country, boys golf, and girls golf. We don't have our own golf course, right, sponsored by the school, so that is normal. I was just pointing out that those are the 3 that have their home competitions, not on school grounds. Of those 13 included in that list above that do participate in school facilities, I count 12 that I would deem participating in home events in a high school level facility. With that one caveat you see in the next line, the wrestling program, any home meets or home contests is in the middle school gym. On the next portion here, we have 13 varsity schools. Again, this is going off of the most recently completed school year. We have 13 varsity sports that have the majority of their practices and or workouts on school grounds. Again, I'm not going to read through all of those, but boys golf, girls golf, and wrestling do not. Boys golf and girls golf, obviously, we don't have golf course on site here. So cross country, maybe they do a lot of their workouts here in the stadium, then they have their home meets at the sportsman club. But what I'm noting here is the wrestling program does the majority of their practices and workouts outside of school grounds on the J-Way barn facility. So there's a lot of numbers to take in on this section here. This is more just trying to be as transparent as possible. I'm not going to read through all of this, but from the most recently completed year in which I have full data, you can see some of the ticket gates and revenues and expenditures for these are all fall and winter sports. The reason that spring sports not included on these, this was the initial COVID school year, right? So we didn't really have spring sports that year. This is something that I am looking to finish and update for the most recently completed school year, in which I will be able to pull all of that data. I will then also be going to the 21-22 school year. I wasn't here for that, but I'm going to do my best to fill in basically the next 2 years of this data. I just, at the time of this presentation, and in the interest of not waiting another month for it, I don't have that, so I'm not going to present guesses or incomplete data sets. So that's what that is there. And here is from the most recently completed wrestling season. You'll see on the far left the athletic fund expenses, and I'm not going to read these out individually, but the transportation cost obviously is fairly high in regards to the rest of the lines there. The middle column, the athletic fund receipts, we made just over $3,000 on the participation fees, and between the two home meets that we hosted, 738. That total, again, and I'm going to mention it probably down later in my summary of the season, but that 738 could really rise a lot higher if we were to host any Saturday or weekend tournaments or 14 meets. This was just two duels. One was a high school, middle school duel. One was a high school only duel. So there is a lot more opportunity there. Those nights we also had the youth program going on the other night. So the two youth only meets, the JYA program staffed it, basically ran the ticketing and kept the ticketing, also paid for officials. Whereas the athletic department, the two meets where we did have high school and or middle school wrestlers, the athletic department basically staffed it, and paid for the officials, but got to keep that ticket gate. So since we were hosting youth level at that same time, we lowered what would a normal high school or middle school meet, we lowered that price. So again, if we were to have a standalone event, if it did not include the youth, we could be charging $5 or $7 a ticket. Those nights we charged $3, just because we had some people might be there just for the youth meet. So again, don't want to get too thick in the woods. You can see there, but anyways, that's just a snapshot of what the district spent and brought in on the wrestling program this most recent year. Note about the barn facility that we have leased from JYA. It's a 2-year lease that began August 1st, running through September 30th of this year. So that will be there will be attention needed for that shortly. Basically, the school district has first right of refusal to use that facility, but from the end of the school day until 6 p.m. on weekdays, and early in the mornings until noon on Saturdays. And the primary tenants or school programs that use that would be the wrestling program, the softball and baseball the school softball and school baseball programs. So you'll see back above when I put the general fund expenses, I listed $4,000. The way I see it, that is used by the wrestling program, softball and baseball programs, but the wrestling program probably uses it a little bit more of each of those individuals. So that explains why that figure was $4,000 up at the top and not something different. Just notes about which of those teams and how much they're using it. Wrestling team obviously uses it a little bit in late fall, getting ready for their season, and daily usage from November really through the end of February. And minor usage in the spring and summer months. And you can see what I have there for baseball and softball, but there is a lot of overlap. So again, I've got kind of a season recap or a snapshot of the program. It's fantastic that we have access to this facility, but the teams that are using it, we are pigeonholed into being done by 6 p.m. on weekdays. And it's tough, especially in some of those months, January, February, where we're in the middle of wrestling season and softball and baseball are trying to get started up. I can't fit all of those teams every day after school, from 2:30 to 6. So that is something that we need to work around, right? One note here about the wrestling account with the Johnstown Athletic Boosters going into this last season, and actually it's December 6th. That team account only had 148, just with a couple of fundraisers, and I'm not going to say that there wasn't a lot of effort in those, but just having really 3 main fundraisers, they raised that total under the direction of Coach Josh Erb from 148 to over $10,000, which I thought was impressive. There was maybe more involvement, more fundraising efforts, more involvement in the boosters, and some things that I saw that I liked that I know happened this year that I don't think happened quite as much in prior years. And so, not that that relates to a whole lot, I just wanted to show that there were some things that were going on that were pretty good with the wrestling program this year. And here, I've got a kind of a summary of the season. Just a few things I want to point out is, I'm sorry if that's tough to read. A couple things to point out is that this past year they had wrestling program 7 through 12 got some brand new uniforms. The old ones were much needed of repair or replacement. And one thing that's nice about those is it includes the option for singlet, also the option for the shirt and fight shorts, which is becoming more the norm. And certain kids might be more comfortable in one type of uniform or the other. So I mentioned this earlier, but in the second paragraph there, we did host 4 home meets. 2 of those were youth only. 1 of those were youth, middle school, and high school, and 1 of those was youth on one mat and high school meet on the other mat. So it was really cool collaboration between me, a couple of the wrestling coaches, some leaders of the youth program. I thought that was really cool that on 2 of those days, you might have a younger kid wrestling, and right as soon as they get done, they get to watch the high schoolers and the middle schoolers on the other mat. That's something I'd like to continue going forward. But also I would really like to have 1 or 2 standalone high school and or middle school meets going forward where, not that it's all about the financial figures, but we could make more money on a standalone high school or middle school meet, where maybe we host one on a Saturday and we're still not there all day, but maybe we invite 3 or 4 teams. And I do think we could bring in a decent ticket gig. So that's kind of what that second and third paragraphs is outlining. And then I've got some postseason accolades there. And while we did not have any high school wrestlers advance past the district meet, we did have we did have 4 of them advance at least to the second day of that tournament. And we did have some middle schoolers get some pretty nice accomplishment in the LCL league meet. So that's good, looking forward to next and future seasons. Here I've got kind of a pulse, I guess, of the wrestling program. And this is through what I have observed, the people that I've talked to, both during the season and after season. So we've got, we had 3 coaches for the high school and middle school program this past year. For various reasons, 2 of them have decided to not continue. But I appreciate all 3 of our coaches, Josh Erb, Josh Clark, Pat Baylog, for all that they've done, not just this year, but in prior years. For our wrestling program, I've already noted about the uniforms. And the fun, some of this is kind of recapping, I guess, if anybody's reading this report throughout, I'm just kind of recapping some of the things that maybe we've gone over already. Talking to all those stakeholders, very much appreciative of the JYA barn facility, but I did note it does put a bind on some of our practice schedules and obligations. If we've got coaches that want to help out the program, but they don't get off work until 4:30 or 5, it's kind of tough. We have to end practice by 6 o'clock. So that is definitely a strain, right? Sure, other programs or facilities are not without their issues or things to work around, but that is definitely something that is potentially affecting this program. So we're, again, very appreciative of that JYA barn facility, but it's the best solution we have, but maybe not the perfect solution, I guess. And talking to multiple stakeholders, of course, there's a lot of optimism that wrestling can grow in this community. I think it will require a whole full heave effort of whoever the new varsity coach may be, and that staff, of figuring out, okay, let's take a really hard look at, why did this kid participate all through the youth program and now they're an 8th grader, now they don't wrestle anymore, that type of thing. We need to figure out what is causing some of these kids to participate at a younger age, or maybe even at the middle school, and then they don't continue to high school. So that's something to note there. And also noted that some people have, stakeholders would like to see those home meets being held in the high school gym and not the middle school gym. So I'm just going to leave that where it is, I guess. Note about OHSAA and maybe where we fit in. There are 817 member schools in the state, and Johnstown is one of 477 that offers wrestling as a high school sport. So that's just there to say, this is not something that's given at every school or every community. There we've got our wrestling weight classes. I've only listed those out for a note here at the end, but basically, I'm not going to read through all those. At the high school level, for OHSA, there are 14 total weight classes in any boys or co-ed meet, and there are 16 total weight classes at any middle school meet. So on to my recommendation for what to do with what I've just presented and what this needs to look like going forward. So it is my opinion that to run a healthy and sustainable program, on a given year, we should have at least half of the weight classes filled. So it makes it very tough scheduling dual team or 2-team meets when, let's say, we've only got 6 wrestlers and we're hosting Heath and maybe they've only got 6 wrestlers. It's not a given that all 6 are going to have a weight class to match up with. So it's my recommendation that, given that there are 14 high school weight classes and 16 middle school weight classes, that the bar for the minimum participation for any given year should be 7 high school wrestlers and 8 middle school wrestlers, which I'm going to kind of scroll back up. You'll see that we have been really at or below that line. We've been pretty much at that line. On average, in the last 7 years, I believe that is, we've had about 6 high school and 7 middle school wrestlers. So some years we've been above that for both. Some years we've been above that for one. Some years we haven't been above those lines for either grade level. So what to do with meeting or not meeting those levels, that minimum bar level. It is my recommendation. Oh, I need to keep scrolling here. It is my recommendation that we move forward immediately on hiring a new Johnstown High School wrestling varsity head coach. And then once that is filled, filling in the middle school head coach and placing this expectation upon them with coordination from any support that the district, the athletic department, myself can give to that coaching staff, that I believe we should have at least 7 athletes. So going forward into this next 22-23 season, that the high school wrestling program has at least 7 athletes on that roster and complete the season. So if somebody's injured, we can include that. But if we have one kid quit in the middle of the season and one academically ineligible part of the way through the season, I would not count those. So I would want 7 healthy or potentially, hopefully not, but potentially injured to continue for normal status for the winter 23-24 season. If we were to have 6 or fewer participants on the roster or not finish the season due to ineligibility or just lack of motivation by quitting, then for the 23-24 season, the high school wrestling program would continue under a 1-year club status, and we would have to re-meet that qualification of 7+ athletes to continue or go back to a school sponsor, if that makes sense. And then In the same vein, treat the middle school as a separate entity, and to have at least 8+ athletes finish the upcoming 22-23 middle school wrestling team. If that roster is below that number or does not meet that for finishing the season, the same type of thing for the 23-24 season, they would be able to continue, but as a club status sport and not a school sponsored sport. So the main differences for those that don't know of a club sport means there would be the facilities and some of the resources from the high school and the athletic department would still be available, but any coach would be a volunteer. Any transportation would have to come out of a team account, and pretty much it would have to be a self-funding. So that would be my recommendation for a direction for the high school, middle school program moving forward. Sure. Yeah, so to continue on as a club sport, and you would still be a OHSAA recognized sport. So this doesn't mean that we can't participate in any LCL or OHSAA events. It would just basically mean we could still participate in a regular season as you would with dual, tri, quad meets and weekend tournaments. But this would basically be a lack or a lessening of resources and financial backing from the school district and the athletic department fund. Hopefully that answers the question there. Well, so I think there's a little bit of a point, something to point out there. Just to compare it, the high school lacrosse program is a current club program, which some do not realize. They still participate on the field. It still says Johnstown or Johnny's on their chest. So some people, whether it's in this community or when you go to other lacrosse games, they don't realize that lacrosse team is a club sport. So there would still be recognition from the district, recognition from the community as Johnstown Wrestling is still Johnstown Wrestling. All that means is if one or both levels is a club sport is now any busing would need to be funded by Johnstown Wrestling fundraisers. Any coaches would not have a paid status for that year. Those would just be a couple of examples. Any officials, if we were to have any home meets for a club team, the officials, that tab for the officials would not be picked up by the district. It would be picked up by the Johnstown Wrestling program and their fundraisers. I do not have really an answer for that. It's my direction been given to me that
It's been the general direction of the district that because of the nature of wrestling and the mats going down and up, first of all, when we first moved into the building, it was about caring for the floor. The mats are abrasive, can be very abrasive on the floor. There were a lot of issues related to why not, but we have operated under the premise, I think it's agreement of the board, that we would not host the tournaments over there. And it was part of the guidelines when we opened up the new high school that we wouldn't have middle school sports over in the high school, that they were there for the high school sports. But wrestling specifically at that time was contained to the middle school. Then it moved down to the barn because of the other the pressure on the gyms schedule wise is atrocious. Trying to get all these teams in there, let alone outside teams. It is a varsity sport. I don't think there's any edict that says it has to be off campus.
Right.
I think you've hosted tournaments in the middle school building. I think it was a facility protection issue originally. And we've stayed with that ever since. I don't think it's conscientious to
As far
penalize
as practice
wrestling.
goes, it's at the barn because you can't, at the high school, you can't have boys and girls basketball and wrestling all in that gym every day, getting the mats in, out, up, And they also use the middle school gym. Varsity baseball, we keep them out of the high school. They're the only sport that we pay extra money for and reserve a spot for. Yes, we don't pay for golfers or cross country to go use those other facilities.
Sure, the JYA barn is used by
We
primarily
utilize it
wrestling, softball, and baseball.
The agreement with JYA was made specifically for wrestling, and the time not used by wrestling is utilized because we paid for those hours. But the use of the barn over there was made specifically for wrestling. I'm over there probably 5 days a week. That's why we don't have them in the cafeteria anymore, and that's why this issue came up. That's why they cannot wrestle in the cafeteria anymore. That's what the issue was when we moved out. I mean, the old wrestling room was the cafeteria. Correct. Sure. We met with this group 3, 4, 5 years ago every year, and we have not seen an increase in the number of wrestlers at the high school or middle school level. Sure. You can, I guess we'll go back. If we want to put it back in the middle school, we can. You will be greatly restricted on the number of practices you can have because getting the mats down and up, because we're still going to have middle school basketball, baseball, girls basketball, boys basketball, all of those. That gives you much more hours of practice. If you want to trade that for over here and have a very restricted hours of practice, because you just can't, if you want to put the mats down and get up, get them down, you're going to have 45 minutes of time.
If we're talking in season, I would say most sports have an hour and a half to 2 hours for an in-season practice. Obviously, that varies greatly depending on what sport we're talking about. If we're talking about a varsity level versus a 7th grade level, what have you. But I would say an hour and a half to 2 hours for an in-season sport would be a typical practice.
Two hours.
Middle school basketball team, I would say typically an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on.
I would say in season probably 2 hours. Football team, No, I would say so. On Mondays they typically go about 3 to 6. Tuesdays, if we're talking about high school football, 3 until about 5:30 on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and 3 until 5. So 2 to 3 hours for the varsity, the high school football team in the stadium, Monday through Thursday.
What's the plan on, Josh required both drivers? What's the plan on tracking practice time is really strict, reads very tight. You can't, so that would mean giving it up by junior high, high school. That means an hour and a half for each practice. You just said most practices are about 2 hours. So basketball is
Hour and a half to 2 hours is correct.
how do you think that we're getting your coaches to these other high school and see when you're not providing that?
So I guess my question back to you would be, what are the boosters able to provide us to build a building to participate in that? Because right now, we don't have the number of hours in the gym available at all for this one here. 2-3 weeks.
So we talk through this every single year.
I'd agree.
We had facilities. Remember, we had facilities that took practices up to
By the health department, correct.
I'm not gonna go down there. You already went down there.
Mhm.
You're not helping us grow. Not only that, but these kids, the numbers that you show on here are listed. We don't limit to pay. We have every year, what happens is these 8 kids that make it through the season, they're like, they're gonna wrestle all the way through, right? They'll bring their friends, say, hey, no, come over here, let's practice better football or whatever. But as soon as they see the facility, they see that they're limiting an hour and a half of practice time, and not only that, you can't, it's not even an hour and a half, because the rule is that we have to roll the mats up before practice is over, before the other people can get. So we have to end practice at least 10 minutes early. You can't change, you can't weigh in. Even if somebody knows there's no bathroom, and then in the winter, that's what you're forcing their kids to do. But they have to use the restroom in the middle of the hottest part of our season, February. And you're making it go out in the portage of it. Frozen. How do you expect the kids to stay? We have every year. This year we started with 15 kids. 15 kids. By the time the bill came, because you guys are late on starting your bill. By the time the bill comes and said, hey guys, you have to pay. I can't explain to you how many parents pay $140. I'm a coach. I can't explain the facilities we have. Now I know my age. I'm going to stay. They're stuck. That's why we finished third. Can you imagine that? Third in the conference with half the weight classes. That's how good your program is. That's how good these kids are for these coaches. But they don't have enough support. You've got to give some. This,
I guess going back, Pat, what are your recommendations of what you would like and what funding are you looking to provide to get the, because we know this gym doesn't have the hours in it. Let's just face it. We're talking another facility, correct?
we're talking someone. Give us something.
We did that, but that's what you're saying. The barn wasn't, what other facility works for your needs is what I'm saying. We tried to identify, we went to strip malls, we looked at other buildings, we looked all over and couldn't find anything that met the needs.
My freshman and middle schoolers, you gotta get a ride back to high school. The other thing is middle school, the high school, freshman and sophomore, they don't have a ride. They don't have a car. You're asking parents at 3 o'clock on a winter day, leave work to take the kids over. We need somewhere on Sunday. And we have facilities. Don't give me that line that we don't have enough room. We have facilities. We've gone through this. You say, no, can't have this room. No, can't have this room. You have to work with us. You can't say, keep telling me, bring more money. We did. We raised money. If you give us a place, a facility, that's not the biggest problem. You have to be willing to work with us. Through Dan, you've been here every year that I've been here for 10 years. That's how you're every time. You've done nothing for this program. Tim, same thing. I come here every year. Dale, I talk to you all the time. I want you to help, but I know you want to help, and I think your hands are tied. I don't know you, Alan, the same thing. But the point is at what point are we going to help these kids? Our coaches have done the work.
I thought we had helped it when you were here last time, and we said we're going to work on getting a facility.
We gave us a porta john. So we have a facility. Legit
I didn't say a facility. I said we were going to look at cooperatively finding a place. The place was offered through JYAA. We're very grateful for that. We rented it, we paid the rent, but we didn't have any other place on campus that we felt we could put another facility. We're out of real estate. Tell me where. I'm listening.
One year when we lost a lot of our kids,
Uh-huh.
we watched them and I competed for them. We were over at the wider facility, but we didn't even do it right away. We moved us, started the season into the, what was it, where the new weight room is. No, nothing was in there yet. We had our weight, we had our mats and everything. We had 15 kids together. It was awesome. It was great. In our own place, bathroom, whole 9 yards. Everything was great. And you came in, looked around, and said, the point has to come in.
Yeah.
You moved us. You moved us. Where did you move us within? I want to let people know where you moved
I
us.
assume we moved you to the JYAA building. Was there an interim place? Listen, I was busy building that building, which hadn't been renovated.
You came in, watched our practice,
Yes.
and then you said, you know what, I don't care. I don't have time for it.
Oh, no, I did not.
That's-
No, no, no. I just said the flooring's coming in.
Let's be honest.
The flooring was coming in. We had to move we had to clean it out so we can get the flooring, or we wouldn't.
You put your hands washed. You know what happened to that team. To our team.
I didn't have jurisdiction over who was in there. My assignment from this board was to renovate that building. It was an architectural move for me. I didn't say who did what in that building. I didn't have that authority.
We got moved to the construction site over here at Sarah Cross 2 weeks before our first match. 2 weeks before our first match. Had no way to prepare. I had kids split our kids up into groups. We had kids in the hall. We had kids in the thing. We couldn't wrestle at the same time. You know how many kids? You know why we only have 8 kids now? Because of that. They didn't stick around to pay. After you saw us, with no lights on, none of the lights.
I mean, I'd like to say, like, listen, we've run into this with other sports. Football, we had a stadium burned down. We moved to Searfoss. We didn't see the program fall apart because of one building. If a building isn't the reason we have a football team, so the facility with the restroom, with your own room, isn't what you want. The JYA barn doesn't have a restroom you don't want. That's where I keep coming back to. We'll work with you. I don't know where to put everything in this district. We don't have a field house to put people in. Where is it?
Where?
We got moved here because the high school doesn't have room for us for the meeting even anymore. We don't have the board meetings over there in that room because it's being utilized.
The room at the stadium? You mean the reception room?
That stays vacant during the winter. That room there. We can find room to really work.
There's no heat in there either.
No.
There's no heat in the locker room?
Well,
Not in the community
not
room.
in the
That side did
community
not
room.
get heat
You're
or air
talking about the
conditioning.
community room. There's no heat in there.
The room that doesn't have.
Correct.
Didn't.
Where all the food is, where you do
The money that was donated for that room built that room.
Did.
Yeah, I
We
know.
winterized the whole facility over there.
It's not air conditioned.
Yeah.
But
We got minimal heating, right?
It's not heated or
Minimal
air
heat.
conditioned.
Yeah, it's with service. That's what we have is piping heat
Maintenance-
for that. That's
maintenance
it's
heat.
not.
Maintenance heat.
no, locker room. No,
Yeah.
there's heat.
Yeah,
It's kept at minimal levels in the winter.
just keep it from freezing.
You know, like how wrestling, they turn up the heat then when you were coaching.
You can't do that over
Can't
that
do that.
facility.
I want to
When you
revisit.
did that. But there's really good.
There's no restroom over there. We winterized.
I want to revisit your comment.
Oh, well, we were.
I didn't move
winterized
you
rest-
anywhere. My assignment was to redo that weight room. I didn't have any authority to,
We used to.
Don't have to.
could I do, no, wait, let's. I know, but couldn't you, do I have any authority to do that? No, I didn't have any. I'm one board member. I'm a board member with one vote. He knew that. He knew
Look,
that.
look, let's. Why are we here? We're here for the students. We're here for the students. All of us are. Everybody sitting in this room. And this has been an age-old problem. Trying to get mats in a gym that can be quickly set up, quickly torn down to accommodate all the many teams in this community. And to cooperate with our youth within this community, JYAA. We try our best, and it's been quite a process, hasn't it? It's been a challenge for this board and administration and community to make it all work. But you know what? We made it work as best we can. There are concerns with mats in and out. There were concerns initially, like I said, when we had the brand new floors, we controlled a lot of traffic initially on the minimally coated floors. You knew we had to rip a floor up over there at the high school. Okay. So that's where I was going originally with the comment. All right. So what's it look like if we put wrestling in the middle school? Robbie, I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on the schedule for a lot of teams. It's probably going to boot JYA out of the facility, given the total hours that you have. We've so many times, year in, year out, we've run these scenarios of schedules, and it keeps coming down. We just can't put more in the facilities we have. I've argued for years, we need a field house. We can't afford to go out with taxpayer dollar to build a field house. We got to have some more space in this community for the growing programs that we have. It's a challenge anywhere we try to put wrestling. When I first came here, we had wrestling. We had wrestling barn out back. You stored them out back, and they had to grab them, carry them in, roll them out in that cafeteria or gym if it was minimally available then. You've never had space here. All right? Most of your programs will have a dedicated wrestling room. If you want to grow them, a lot of programs have a dedicated, because that's their space, man. Okay? You go, you work out there, you build your pro. I'm not disagreeing with you. There's less incentive to join wrestling because of conditions. That doesn't mean anybody on this board or community doesn't support the program. We just don't know which way to go with it, man. So if I go and say, okay, board, Robbie, you got to put wrestling in the middle school gym next year. Let's just go with middle school gym. Let's not even go to the high school and protecting it and all the different sports running through there. Let's just say it's going to be in the high school gym. What do you have to do? Where are you going to store them? Where are you going to store those mats?
Not really sure where we'd store the mats overnight in the middle school.
We even looked year after year. We looked at going to roll them up into the ceiling. What's that cost? Be able to drop them down, roll them out. What's that cost? Is that a possibility to quickly get them up, get them down, get them out, get them cleaned? Okay. A lot of this was about protecting the floors that the board put a lot of money into. I will tell you. It's not saying wrestling's going to tear it. It's just you got a lot of activity getting mats in, getting mats out, all the activity with weight loss and the spitting and all the, wrestling is a different sport, right? You got to go in, you got to make weight. We all know what you do to make weight at times. I got you. With the padding down, it's rolling out the pad. Well, I know. But what we need to do, my point is, you got to do what you have to do to protect the finish. But time, I think, is going to be your greatest challenge, no matter what facility you look at. If you're looking elementary gym, high school gym, middle school gym, we do have health issues if we're going into our cafeterias, and you're rolling up mats and you're disinfecting mats and you're. we didn't have a real, let's just put it this way. We didn't have a real clean situation when we had those mats in what was the high school cafeteria. Yeah. But we ended up practicing in there a lot too. Mats were rolled out eventually. One, tell me where you go put the mats every day. Where you go store them? Which area?
Storage.
Oh, the storage doors?
Yeah.
I'm not sure you would today. What's in there now, Robbie? Yeah. Yeah. What kind of schedule? What's going to happen?
Yeah, just speaking to
Here's
this-
where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
What's going to happen if all of a sudden we make the decision to put the middle school practice facility back at the middle school gym?
Yeah, so if we put the wrestling program, high school, middle school, and middle school gym on a daily basis, what that would mean, let's just imagine a world where we're not rolling up and putting the mats down every day. That would move all of our middle school basketball teams on a daily basis to the elementary gym, which would mean that JYA would not have use of that facility all winter for their youth basketball teams. The wrestling program would then also be at the mercy of the, let me finish, please. The wrestling program would then be at the mercy of the high school and middle school basketball game schedule, where they're likely playing 2 or 3 games a week. So even in that world, you get into the middle of the season, the wrestling team might have regular practices there on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But on 2 out of the 3 of the Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, you could not have practice that day due to a home game. Or the middle school basketball teams would be playing home games at the elementary gym. So that would be a world where we're not rolling up and storing those mats outside of the gym every day. To a smaller scale, if we were rolling up those mats, I don't think there would be much more time than currently exists if we had an hour and a half middle school practice, hour and a half high school practice than what they currently have at the JYA barn. But if they were having more time, it would not really allow for any regular practice for the middle school teams, the middle school basketball teams on a daily basis. So that would mean, again, middle school basketball teams would be housed primarily at the elementary school outside of game days. Wrestling program would still be at the mercy of the middle school basketball schedule. But also we would have to find a space for the, let's say the high school boys basketball team has a home game on Tuesday. Where's the high school girls basketball team going to practice that day? So it's currently already a bit of a juggling act to house in our 3 gyms over the winter, the high school boys and girls basketball teams, the middle school boys and girls basketball teams, and the youth basketball, JYA youth basketball using the elementary, on top of regular school events where you might have one of those facilities closed for a parent-teacher conference or a choir event. I know there's multiple events throughout the year at the elementary where we have to block off those days because maybe they've got an award ceremony and the carpeting and the protective flooring needs to be down, for 24 hours until the next day.
Well, thank you for taking us through that quick analysis in answer to my question. So at the end of the day, we have an answer. We have a question to answer. When we look at a sport, it's a chicken and egg thing. Board's tired of hearing me say that all the time, but I say chicken and egg. The number of students that we have in a program versus the number of students we're going to displace in our current facilities being used becomes a question. And so the chicken and egg part is, well, you say if you had to use the gym, you could double the size, maybe fill all the weight classes. So either way you go, somebody loses. You've asked good questions. Initially, yeah. Not really.
All these things that prohibit a good coach from getting in, what are you going to do? And if you think, okay, this is hard for you guys, imagine if you told me these 8 studs, my champions. Sorry guys, you gotta go figure out somebody that's running. You guys are having a hard enough time figuring out where. Imagine if you told them, sorry, you're no longer anymore based on the fact that you only had 7 kids last year. You guys are gone. You're gonna go have to figure out new home.
I don't think if we went to club, there would be any change to the use of the JYA. Let's be clear of that. The school would still support that. I mean, just, okay, yeah. Your question was where would, I mean, current status would remain whether you're varsity or club. Those are separate issues that we asked. You would ask where would they be, you know, what without a facility if they're club. The club, I guess the JYAA barn is what we have agreement for. I'm not assuming anything. We have a written agreement with them. No, well, that would be their choice. We would not be prohibiting it from, no more than lacrosse is a club sport. And we let them, you know, they practice on our varsity field and they practice here. trophy case now.
So the trophy cases just got
Yeah.
installed over at the high school.
We just installed the trophy
April
case
or
at the high
May.
school, so that's a great opportunity.
They're, all the trophies have been packed away, just
Yeah,
to be
since
clear.
the new school was built.
And then the banners, I believe, were the banners that were in the high school. Were they not purchased by the boosters? I believe at the new high
The
school.
new banners?
The new banners, I thought, were purchased.
No, that was the new banners in the high school up on the wall were purchased as part of the high school project. We had those designed specially. Previous AD
Oh, I
worked
guess-
on that. And I thought we had the state runner-up up there. Hayden, wasn't he?
So
I'm sorry, the new high school.
Yeah,
The new
in the
high
new
school
high school.
trophy when you walk out of the office, or
Just installed within the last couple of
I
months.
would say it's May.
Hayden, state runner-up.
Oh, we can put them here. We have a trophy case.
There's a
here.
trophy case down here at the middle school as well.
In here.
Oh, they're,
They've all been
I thought you meant you had others. We have all the trophies were stored away.
And they
so
were
that we-
inventoried
yeah.
before they were taken out of the cases. They did. Well, Derek isn't here tonight, but we'll definitely talk. But they have the.
The idea
trophy
is to
cases.
use that trophy case. We're going to set criteria. Ruth Ann's working on that for what goes in it and turnover. That way, it's not the same trophies all the time. It's going to rotate for some of the major accomplishments will remain, and then other stuff will rotate based on the seasonal.
What was made of that?
Do we have at JIS, do we have any rooms that are large enough to put a mat?
Trying to look at that.
We don't have the measurements, but we can say that tonight, but we do have the measurements. Tomorrow we can look at it.
Right, don't say that we have it, but do we have a room?
We don't know.
I know. Well, I mean,
Tomorrow, I'll let you know if we have measurements.
As you know, some of the rooms that may be big enough may be the science room, so we can't move the science class because it's got the sink and water and everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's what we'd have to look at over there. But again, short-term solutions, long-term problem. We have a middle school trophy case. We can put those in.
and I love seeing Chris back there, Hayden, Ben. I don't know, or the one
Patrick.
that's sitting behind.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I think that also, I know them just because they were in around the same time that my son was. So it would be great to see you guys come back to some of the practices too. Yeah, that's great, and I like
think
that.
Mr. Orsini's been waiting quite a while to podium.
I think I can summarize some of the questions and some of the information that's going on. If nothing else, I hope you see the passion that these folks here have for wrestling. I had a rush of support of people that said they wanted to come. It's not that type of meeting. This isn't us versus them. It's we have a challenge and we need to get some solutions. But the hard work, the sweat, when you have some hard things, deadlines, numbers and stuff like that, kind of makes that work feel like it's somehow watered down and lessened. So it rises energy and people get excited. I don't disagree with most of the things that were shared both ways. Our challenge is I can't take fourth graders and turn them into sophomores, right? Our third and fourth grade class is huge. I sent 6 kids out of the youth program last year, 5 of which stayed the whole year, 4 of which guaranteed are lifers. They'll go all the way through, it won't change. The class behind that's a little bit smaller, and then which would be the rising 6th graders. The rising 5th graders is large. The rising 3rd graders also large. These are big classes that are coming. I've never had more participation from parents, both through support and direct involvement. It used to be, it was me and Pat for a while. Then it was, I think, Josh and I, just a couple people, and Ben back there came in. Now we have former wrestlers coming back. Chris Block is going to take over the youth program if he stops getting deployed. But so when my children age out of that, he's going to take it over because he has small children. Bradley Shaw's here. He is the little kid whisperer. I struggle relating with kindergarten, 1st and 2nd graders that turn circles. You know, I think I've just grown past that as a coach. They listen, they engage. It's perfect. It's just what we need. So our youth program is vibrant, it's active, and it's growing. 50 kids, 43 kids, COVID year. We cut back to, I think, 25. Last year, 42. Right? So our numbers are there. So that's what's coming. I have a hard time looking parents in the face saying that there isn't a middle school program, there isn't a high school program. I know the club thing's kind of a hybrid, and yes, it makes sense, but we're not going to get a coach to stick for that. We have to figure out what that looks like and how that conversation opens up. But our biggest challenge is facilities. Not so much the quality. It could be better, but it could work. It's the location. Middle schoolers have to go home, then get a ride back to practice because of the schedule. Tough. You're going to lose half the kids right off the bat. You've got to actively be involved. And that's if you came through the program. If you're not involved in the program, and I think what Ben was talking about from a marketing standpoint, we have nothing to market.
But in middle school, though, that's not unique to wrestling. Most, like basketball, you got to go home, come back. You know what I mean? That's not unique to wrestling. That's
different.
a middle school challenge for every sport.
With the exception of wrestling typically doesn't have that challenge because they usually have dedicated spaces. Wrestling is odd in that way as other middle school programs because most of them don't practice in the gym, right? So you don't have to wait for someone to clear off to get time. So typically what happens...
Our typical issue is with coaches, they can't start right after school, so kids go home and then have to come back. It's not necessarily space. Our gyms sit empty most days, 2:30 to 3:30 or 4, because we typically don't have anyone that can get in them.
Yeah, I would just say a good comparison. We've got 4 middle school basketball teams. Only one of them can go right after school, right? We've got 4 middle school basketball teams. If you weren't, I believe it was 7th grade boys basketball this year. If you weren't 7th grade boys basketball, you left school and then came back at some point, whether it was 4:30 or 6 o'clock or 7, you know.
We have 4 teams. Yeah, they have to.
Sure.
We've
So
got 4
two of
teams.
them were before 6 o'clock and 2 of them were after, right? 2 teams.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, they each practice an hour and a half, and that's what we talk about. If we move someone to the gym, we're disbanding another program. 4:30. Yeah, you have 4 teams going after school. No, I could say 7th grade basketball can't go past 6 o'clock. You can pick any one sport and say it can't go. Who coached the 7th grade team? They can't go past 5. The point is that every sport has a coach that has to work around the schedules and abilities. So when we hire a 7th grade basketball coach, we've had people to come up and say, I'd like to coach, but I don't get home until 6. Sorry, we can't have you because your practice time is this window. It's not unique to wrestling. It's very specific to our basketball coach and baseball teams. It's not unique to wrestling, believe me. The 7th grade basketball team, give them their schedule. They're done by 5:30 at 5 o'clock every day.
7th grade boys basketball will go 3 to 4:30.
Right.
And I forget which one of the middle school basketball teams go 4:30 to 6. So
you
could say every single one of our 4 middle school basketball teams, they can't go past 4:30, and that team can't go past. But they have their dedicated time, right? So,
and if you as a coach can't make it,
I think
we
you
can't
could
have you
make
as
the
a coach.
argument that the high school wrestling team their dedicated time is 3 to 4:30. I think, give or take, that was about accurate for this past year. And the middle school wrestling team was 4:30 to 6. If we get new coaches where the time needs to shift because of that, then it can flip flop. But sure, the window we have is after school until 6 o'clock. There's a window given to every single one of our sports, whether it's 7 through 12, whatever the facility is.
He was first year in practice from 6 o'clock to 7. We did this arrangement. We said we need to fit his schedule well. We were told that would be no problem. Right before the season, we had to do it at 5 o'clock. Therefore, we both had to take off work early. So it's not as simple as just saying, this is our time. That wasn't our, we had agreed upon a certain time, and then right before the season, we had to make adjustments. So again, I don't think it's fair to say, but I think, I don't want to give you all the list. Bob wants to do something.
I think I kind of lost my place, but the point is the youth program is vibrant and it's growing. And I think that will continue to grow, but that's going to take time. I just can't shift it forward enough. Recruiting at the middle school age, and certainly at the high school age, is very difficult. It's very difficult to enter wrestling unless you have some previous experience. It's not impossible, but it's non-typical. And our facilities and our situation are what they are. I don't think by any devious factor, but it just worked out that way, is not conducive to recruit. So to put a standard on it to say that you have to hit a certain threshold to continue, I think is a bit of a stretch from a challenge standpoint, because there's been a lot of effort, a yeoman's effort in many cases, to make it work as it is. And I thank the board for the effort they put in, because they were in the same situation we were. We can talk about how we got there, but that's looking backwards. I don't want to look back to what before. The youth program didn't exist for I think 8 to 9 year period. So we had a disruption of feeding into the middle school program and into the high school program. Since that's restarted, we're seeing that re-energized, and we're going to see those numbers continue to build over time. My ask is that we continue to communicate, we continue to find ways, which are not easily discoverable at this point, to host practices on a campus facility so it doesn't require travel, and then to try to work with our times as best as we can. Step one is to hire a coach. I don't know, you've heard before, if we are inviting to hire a coach that's going to be long term. We might get someone that skips in and out, looking to do something else. I want to have a plan. I think someone will come if you say, hey, this is what we're doing now, this is what we're looking at in the future. We talked about some different locations, even some new things that Syracuse we're talking about, but I want to continue to investigate those opportunities. I can confidently tell you that the youth or the wrestling program collectively can probably generate $10,000 a year. But the biggest expense we've ever had as a program out of the boosters was this year. And that was for uniforms. What'd you spend, Josh? $4,000. And I spent another $2,000 on youth so that we would match. I had to buy a lot more uniforms, a lot more weight classes, all side issue. So we had a major expenditure in this year coming out of that $10,000 potentially available. We're not connected on the books, but the high school program hosts and middle school program hosts the youth tournaments. They provide the table workers, they organize it, and everyone you see here is involved for many, many hours to make that work, but that's where the revenue comes from. If we were looking for fundraising opportunities, I have a lot of friends around town that are wrestling coaches that have programs. If we could host a large competitive tournament that would require the high school gym, because we wouldn't fit in the middle school gym, I can bring in known teams around that will bring spectators that didn't have anybody participate and that probably didn't go to that school. So there are opportunities to raise money. I'm committed.
Bob, on that one, how many mats do you need and how big is it?
So you
square footage wise?
It's the fans that you need to account for, not the size. So you need 2 mats. We host a quad, 4 teams. Some teams, your big name teams, DeSales, Worthington, Kilbourne. The kid I wrestled in college as the coach, with the college as the coach of Worthington, Kilbourne. I could get them here. They're not going to come wrestle Johnstown. We got 5 kids. You know what I mean? They got 20 kids, 25 kids that fill their weight classes. They're going to kind of flip-flop in and out. That's the other thing that hurts us, is that we can only have other schools that have small enrollment come wrestle us. You're only allowed to have so many dual matches in a year, so HSC regulation, and they don't want to burn one coming to wrestle 4 or 5 kids. So we're having a hard time getting folks to come to us. But that also keeps us from growing because there's no awareness,
And
there's
that's
no-
the exact issue when we talk to Robbie.
Yeah,
It's like
there's-
we're not
there's
big
no
enough to get
buzz.
them scheduled, and we're not. It's that issue on a mat. What's the measurements of a full mat?
There you go.
I couldn't hear you. 42 by 42.
Now to understand, when we wrestle in practice, the mats aren't rolled out completely.
I've
They're
been
rolled
there.
out as far as we get.
Yep.
So that is what a mat is. If you would have competition, we have anywhere from in high school 4-ish kids to a mat, maybe 5. That would be 10. I'm sorry, partners, because they take up a lot more space. With youth, I can double that because they wrestle in a smaller area and they don't go as fast and they don't run into each other. But if you're looking for size 42 by 42 or some version close to that.
7, 6. And the reason why, as we look for space, I wanted to kind of know what we're looking for mat wise. So you got 7 6-foot sections.
Any challenges with heat, I can take care of all that. I mean, I'm happy to do it. I'll donate it. And he's an electrician. He's an HVAC guy. I mean, all our parents. If you really want to get into like potential, if you bought materials, now again, there's a coding and inspection, all that stuff goes along with it. The parents on the youth program have the skills to build it. So as far as what you could use as far as in-kind donations or anything like that, we can certainly help with that.
Yeah, we run into this issue just to let you know. When we, as a school district, we can't let people build anything anymore for us because we have to get permitting and build it, and it can't be built. It has to be by a licensed contract. So the donation thing has become very difficult for us over as we're running into this with the hitting barn. Baseball's in a similar situation where they said we could grow our program if we had an indoor place to practice and do winter, and they want a barn, and they had boosters that were willing to go essentially build the barn, but we can't let them, and it becomes a donation project is now a $150,000 project for us to run because we've got to competitively bid it and do the things we're required to do. So those become, just so you know, building a building isn't as simple as it sounds, unfortunately.
If you had blueprints or a design or a concept for something of that nature,
We have to bid it. If we build it, we're required to bid it.
no, I understand that, but it would help me with the fundraising aspect.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Vision. I'm happy to go solicit donations. I think the donations are available. Now, scale. You talk about a field house. So that's a little different. That's more than I can do, in my off hours. But if you're talking about a pole barn, a fancy pole barn, 'cause I know what the school required. I think there's opportunity to raise those funds, and I want to put that on the table.
Just for reference, Dale, the maintenance barn we built was roughly,
Oh, you're going to tax my memory there, Tim.
Cost?
Yeah.
About 137,000.
37?
for the small one or the larger one?
137.
They were 260 both together.
So 137, and neither of those have restrooms.
No water or sewer.
No water, sewer. So
you're
just
probably,
like
you're probably at 200,
250 probably,
250 even.
because that was also 3 years ago when prices weren't what they are. So
Depending
we're
on where
probably
they're.
350 now. I mean, not to.
No.
Pricing is outrageous right now.
I understand what you're saying.
Just so you know, like, and that's what we've talked. A simple barn is $350,000. We weren't allowed to have them occupied.
Yeah, sprinkled and you start getting some serious stuff.
You got to figure out how to do your water and sewer either off a building, and if you're increasing capacity, then you got quite high fees. You have
And I
to pay
think
the
everyone
city.
knows, we looked into that building with JYA, and it ballooned to over $1 million just to build a building for water, sewer, everything, our taps and everything else.
Sure.
That so, and that was not anything, what I would say, crazy fancy. It was a 2-bathroom field house or pole barn with concrete.
Another big issue for us is real estate. Where do we build? We're facing that with everything. Where do we build?
No, absolutely legitimate issues. If you have a vision, if you have a reasonable vision, I'm more than willing to help. I would like to dog ear it for wrestling it to some portion of it. Of course, we're not there the whole year. It's what, November to February. High school season is the longest at the end, and the youth program starts a little bit early because we finish up early.
Right.
But those things are all there. There's a lot of people that are willing to support this and grow. I don't think we have the time and in some cases the talent to self-organize. So if you can provide us with that guidance, because the first thing I would hear is we're going to put up a pole barn, 20 by 40. It costs $80,000. You order it online. All you need is a spot. Well, that's not the case.
Right.
But if you can help with the details, I can help get that out to the folks that may be able to participate monetarily.
And just, I mean, we put out for bid to cover the current batting area down there at the baseball field, which is the turf area and the hitting net, just to build a building over top of that. No anything else. And it was just over $140,000 for that.
So whenever a school or public entity bids out work, you're going to pay it. You're going to pay a premium.
Yep.
Because it's considered, public funds, which are not policed quite to the level of private funds. So that's where the concept comes in. I know we have to build to public standards, even from the design standpoint. You're going to get a building that's designed 3 levels higher in design than required by law, and you're going to pay for that design. If the contractor's going to see it, they're going to build it to that design, and you're just going to be paying all the time.
Yep.
And unless you have someone that can understand that, look at it, review it, start knocking things down by direction, people don't offer to give you a deal.
And we've hired Dave Jenny's done this for a career, and that runs our building facilities. He does it. We also have different requirements to go through the Licking County building than private industry does when we occupy with students, and that's where the money runs up. So, yeah, Mr. Jenny has done a fantastic job of running our projects here for us.
I wasn't speaking. I didn't know it existed. I wasn't speaking against it. I was just saying from my experience and what I do, there are 2 sets of essentially bidding. Public funds and private funds get looked at wholly differently.
And he worked on the contractor side of this for 20 some years before he came to work for us,
Very good.
building public and private. So he's been here a year, just to let you know, and he's overseeing projects and saving us a lot of money through those aspects. But even with these projects are just very, very expensive. So, and the reason I put all that out there, this is why we're looking for other opportunities and things, because 1, we don't have land. It's hard to buy right now, anything contiguous to this property. And everyone knows if we want something here and build something here, we want it to be at this main campus, because we've got the north end of where the old middle school in Oregon was. Not ideal to build a building even down there, because now everyone that's here has to now transport down there, get down there at the end of the day.
It would be the same challenges
Yep.
we have with the barn. I mean,
Yep.
just a little further, but when you leave campus,
Right.
that's the issue. A mile or 2 miles or 5 miles isn't
Right.
the issue.
So that's where we run into that, and we're simply running out of space to put any buildings here. So that's why we keep going around in circles, and it's not just wrestling. We don't have room for lacrosse. We don't have, middle school football, we struggle. We're struggling with baseball. This is not wrestling specific as far as space on this campus. We know that. We keep looking. We just filled in the ditch line over there behind the girls' softball field to try to create space. We're trying to create green space around here as much as we can. But unless one of our generous neighbors wants to sell us 100 acres, it's going to be a struggle for the next school.
I don't know which neighbor you have. But,
We've got a few.
well, that's all I really have. Is there any questions or anything that I can help as far as clarify, as far as what is coming with the program over time?
Well, if you could, Bob, I know you said 42. I had 37 being reported by JYA participants in their wrestling program, which I'm not. Do you have that by grade level, so we know?
I have it by name now. I can probably pull. I can do it off of handwritten.
Okay.
I have the way I tracked it was based on we sign up, we communicate through an app. Everyone that signed up for the app got put into the app, and that's where I pulled 42.
Okay. We were just going by what Robbie was given by
37, 42
JYA.
to me is
Yeah.
it's the same. We're vibrant and we're growing.
Yep. I just like if you can give us a breakdown by K through 6 in that, or K5.
Absolutely.
I don't know how you.
Robbie, send it to one of you guys on the board.
If you send it to Robbie,
Okay.
he's the one compiling all the.
And the last thing
data.
I'll say is I've been with 3 or 4 ADs. 1 AD, no communication, probably because I wasn't involved this level. The last 2, Robbie is engaged, information-wise, participation-wise, help-wise. What do you need? Shows up to the different events from time to time. A big plus for us. So certainly something that shows the board's engagement, shows his commitment to be a professional, and we want to continue to do that and reciprocate whenever we can.
I appreciate that. And that's why we've tasked Robbie with a lot of different things in all of the sports to give us, and he's doing a great job of compiling it. Because up until we really didn't have a grasp on what sports were growing, shrinking, how the revenues were working on any of that. And that's what he's putting together for everything. It's not wrestling specific. He's done it for every single sport we have out there. Because we're trying to plan for facilities as well. I think everyone, for all the different sports are growing as the district grows. And eventually, what do we do when we have enough kids for freshman teams? Right now we have JV and varsity, not a lot of have freshmen, but as the district grows and we start having freshman teams, we don't have space for them. So that's where we're looking at. The bigger picture is how do you start to accommodate those? So this is not wrestling specific work that Robbie's doing, but obviously it impacts wrestling, and that's why we're interested in the program as well.
From a fiscal standpoint, the booster fund that's a separate fund. It has no value if there's no program. So I can't speak for whoever the new wrestling coach would be if we hire that or how that works administratively. But in my opinion, if it's a $5,000 issue, cover it. And just get us over the bridge until we can get to the point where it's self-funded. I don't even know.
I've got a lot of confidence. Robbie's done a great job of recruiting other coaches in other sports here. We've really got some great coaches across the board recently. So I've got confidence that he will do the same for this program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for your input. Appreciate it.
Yep. And we're seeing it in all of our sports. And that's our challenge is where do we put them all? Oh, no, look, if we build a building, every sport will be in there year round. I mean, we're not out of space for any, we're out of space. And if we build anything, our softball teams, our baseball teams are constantly, I won't say arguing, but, advocating for additional time in the gym, in the barn. No one has enough time. We don't have enough space for any of our current sports. That's just the reality of what we deal with. So no one's, under the impression, just like that JYA barn lease. Yes, we did it for wrestling. Let's call it what it was. But as soon as we saw time and hours in there, we filled them because we have a need in multiple sports. I've talked to, even if we ever cover that baseball, lacrosse says they'd like to be in there. Track said they'd like, if we cover a building and give them anywhere to work out, they're in there. So it's not that. It's we go back to, we are the Board of Education. Our job is to educate primarily, and we have to watch the tax dollars for that. We don't have tax dollars to go out and build buildings for just sports and, in general. We have to watch those dollars and watch as we grow, because if we build one here, we're going to build one here, we're going to build one here. Every sport can't have their own building. We're going to have to build something that gets utilized by everybody. We're not a district that's going to have a field house that's specific to basketball and a wrestling building, and we're not going to have a baseball indoor training. We're going to have a building that we share, much like when we just renovated the old weight room. We renovated that and we rebranded, I'd say, as, a performance center, because we've got every program in there now working out. And Robbie works very hard to keep that. And that weight room is consistently packed. Everyone's got their little window of time for every sport to get in there. Those are the challenges that we run into, is we're not short on any want or need or desire for additional space or facilities. We're restrained by the actual building sizes we have and the land that we own. Oh, I'd agree. If 10 booster groups want to get together and generate that kind of revenue, we would certainly be interested in that. It's where we're looking at it from a board is, again, these are taxpayer dollars for education. So we have to be very careful when we allocate any dollars that don't enhance the educational process. That's plain and simple as a board. That's our prime objective. So when we look outside of that, and I'm as much of a supporter of everything athletic that we have, but those things have to be balanced. We have other growth opportunities coming up in our academics. We're seeing continual rise in, the need for additional teachers. We just hired 5, 6, 7 tonight. There's cost involved with growth there that we have to be prepared for first and primarily. Then we look at the others. That's just the reality. We would hope so. Business is bringing, yes, and that's where it's not instantaneous. That's the problem. That's the problem.
Remind them we need to pass that mill levy.
Well, they will, but we will. That's 4 or 5 years down the road before you start. You collect them a year in arrears. So when they open in 3 years, you collect it in 4 years. So that's our challenge is meeting some of those gaps. We've got levies up, that'll have to be renewed. We have a lot of challenges in front of us that we're tackling right now financially. Anyone have anything else? I really appreciate the conversation. Pat, you and this is 3-4 years of having these conversations. It's not personal. We have, and we continue.
Not as much.
We continue to work on this, and we know it's a challenge. We appreciate Josh. I've been over to your wrestling practices when you were over there. I know it's not ideal. I see the mats rolled 2 feet up the wall on each side. We look at those things. We try. We'll continue to work on those.
They were 4 feet up the wall in the weight room.
Right.
It's a little,
Yeah, a little different over there, but we'll continue to work on this. But I will say we do need help from you guys as well, thinking outside the box as to what can work, what's reasonable. We all know what ideal is. We don't have ideal on either side on this. So if we can continue to look for compromise, we'll look on our end as well. I do thank Robbie for putting together a comprehensive report, because I will say we hear it's growing. We hope it's growing. We expect it to grow. We've got to keep, and you guys have to keep pushing that. And as one, it's that chicken and egg that Dale talks about, is if the sport grows, we can justify. If we build it, it'll come. That's where we're in between on. So with taxpayer dollars, we're very cautious of spending. Anyone else have anything? I appreciate it. We wrote it down. We're going to talk about that separately. We had some criteria. I don't see why like a champion or the runner-up that we had, something of those natures. They're reserved for. Right.
we recognize them.
Yep.
I wrote it down, Ben.
Yeah.
I wrote it down.
Yep. Yeah. I think those are easy things for us to accommodate and look into. And from a board member standpoint, I want to say we'll come up with criteria of what meets to go up there, because like anything else, we want it to be, if you're up on that wall, you've accomplished something great. We don't want, so we'll correct.
I think
Correct.
First order of business, Robbie, if you do an assessment on the current banners, because they are by category now, where you have state champs,
Cross-country,
district runner-up,
wrestling,
all that.
Yeah.
So if somebody is missing on there that needs to be up there,
Sure.
we need to
Yeah,
correct
there's a
what we have
criteria
first.
that's been set, and
That's where I thought we
it-
had.
As it stands right now, in the high school gym, there's no individual names, right? So you can
Right.
talk about team accomplishments, and there's criteria set for that for the various postseason awards or league champions type of thing. And those team awards are up there. To my knowledge, there's not a single individual, whether it's wrestling or a different sport. There's not. So there is a criteria that's set for what's up in the gym. If there's something that meets that given criteria that is not up there,
That's why I'm asking you to
yeah,
check
I
to
would
make
love to
sure.
know about that. There's
They don't have enough for.
That's why wrestling may not be up there, because they don't have enough for a team. They don't have enough members.
A team award. But the golf team has a champion. Yeah, I mean they're up there for that. And that's what Robbie will check.
He's going to do it.
I guess I know keeping it today, but since it is
We'd have to look to see what that opens up because we may have a bunch of golfers. We may have a bunch, you know what I mean? I'd be cautious before I commit to something like that because the next thing I might have, I was just going to track, I may have 50 different.
Cross country.
Those would be the challenges to that. So
There's a criteria that's been set to be on a given banner, and I would compare wrestling to sports like track, cross country, and golf, where there's the individual accomplishment and there's the team accomplishment. You can make it to state as an individual cross country runner. We had one this year. You can also make it to state as a team, as a cross country team. So what has been established and what's up there, there are no individual awards, whether we're talking about wrestling or track or cross country. So if we were to put wrestling individual awards, I would then need to look at, and we would, athletic department needs to look at what that would affect. Right now, instead of 6 banners, we need to have space for 16.
That doesn't mean we can't recognize it in other ways out in the trophy case.
Sure.
Out,
Right.
You know what I mean?
We
There's
also
other
have
ways
the-
to recognize those.
Tim, we also have the area that's been constantly looked at, and I think they're getting close to a decision. The hallway going back for the locker
To the
rooms
locker
for the
rooms.
Hall of Fame,
Yep.
that could be a individual award wall below that as well.
We're
in
still
some way,
working
as long
on
as
a
it's
lot
done
of
in a
these
classy
things.
way. Yeah,
Yep, and that's what we're looking to emulate over there.
Taking notes.
we have all that. It's just how it goes up and where. Oh
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
We
everything.
have all of the trophies.
We didn't get rid of
all
anything.
the individual awards, all the team awards. They're all inventoried. They're
If it
packed
was in
away.
here, it's polished.
If it was here, we have it,
They're secure.
and it's cleaned now.
They're
So
secure. I saw it.
no, we're. And I don't know if you're. The trophy case just got finished a couple of months ago in the high
You
school.
wouldn't
We're working
believe
on
the
that.
volume
Oh, it's
of
tremendous.
trophies we have stored.
I've got a document that's probably
And
got
Chronicle.
42 or 44 tabs on it, and it's allocated by box and what sport. And it's not just athletics. There are music and band awards in there as well. And to figure out how to fit 44 boxes and decide what goes in the trophy case where you can probably fit 1 or 2 boxes worth, that's something that the athletic department, the district administration has. There's no trophies.
Yeah, your cases will probably only hold current year type things
Yeah.
or really remarkable
Yeah, that's
state champion
kind
type
of
stuff.
more or less the
That's what it'll
criteria.
turn over.
Try to get the accomplishments and awards that current students would have achieved, and then some of those much higher reaching awards that are probably like to the state level for those to have a permanent hold in. I'm glad that the trophy case look really good.
It'd be great to put them all up in a community field house
We
someday.
can't. There you go. We can't fit 42 boxes worth into those trophy cases. So that's something that the board, district administration, myself, the athletic department, we have access to those. And by the time we start the school year, we're gonna see some stuff in that trophy case.
Sounds great. I appreciate everyone. Any other comments, questions? I think at this moment, anyone else on the board? If I can get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swagger?
Yes, motion